We are so glad to be invited here for your year in review event. We are the Knuckle Dusters, and I'll introduce the guys a little later in the set. You know, what we have here for you this evening is a short 1-hour program, and we're going to kind of divide that in two. The first half of that, we're going to try to concentrate on some Civil War era tunes because that is fitting for this audience and this venue. And then we're going to gravitate towards more of what is known as old-time fiddle music, which is what we Knuckle Dusters kind of hang our hat on. We play all kinds of different music, but old-time fiddle music is what really drives this group, and you'll hear that this evening. So, you know, as far as the Civil War influence and what it means to us with music, and particularly the area that we live in this beautiful area where you know, Maryland and Virginia and West Virginia and Maryland all come together. We live in a hub, and it's really a unique hub for music even 175 years later. When I first met these guys, you know, playing Civil War music in our living rooms. And that just kind of tells you that so many years later that it's pervasive. It still hangs in this area. And if you were to go 2 hours north of here to where my family's from in central PA, nobody's sitting in their living rooms playing this music. And so it has staying power. The other thing I'll say about what we're going to play tonight, especially with the Civil War music, there's no easy way to say that in our country's early history and through the Civil War years, this country was built on immigrants and slave labor. And from that came all kinds of different musical influences. And so with that, you're gonna hear that this evening. Most of the first set of tunes we're gonna play, about a half a dozen tunes, ranging about the middle of the 1800s through the end of the Civil War. You're just going to hear that, and I'll try to talk about them as we go. The very first tune we're going to play is something, again, that has some immigrant influence from European and particularly Scotch-Irish influences. This is called The Gal I Left Behind, or The Girl I Left Behind. And if you can imagine going off to war, whenever that might be in whatever time period, this tune predates the Civil War. You're going off to war, this is the gal I left behind, and we'll leave it at that as far as our end of it. We're interested in playing it and not talking about
Just
it,
like
right?
the Scots had a tune called The Highlander's Farewell.
Okay.
And that was a tune he played for his lady before he went off to
Sure.
through the centuries.
Sure, at last. So this is the gal I left behind. this next piece also a middle of the 1800s tune, but a tune that came from Scotch-Irish immigrant influence. There's a tune called Soldier's Joy. And this is probably one of the most well-known old-time fiddle tunes that you'll hear all over the place. And it's got a signature line in it. We're not going to sing a lot of lines in this, but the main signature line is it's 25 cents for the morphine boys, 15 cents for the beer. And you mix that with a little whiskey, and you can imagine what kind of joy the average soldier might have been having.
Takes us away from here.
Yes. Carry us away from here.
Yeah.
This is a piece called Soldier's Joy. Well, it's 25 cents for the morphine boy, 15 cents for the beer, 25 cents for the morphine, now carry us out of here. I talked about this great area that we live in and how there's still a local tie to this music. These two birds here in the middle is as local as it gets. Hagerstown natives. In the middle here is Richard Pryor. He's not so funny, but he can play a band. And literally, he could walk home from here if he needed to. Robbie's a little farther walk to Boonesboro, but he grew up on the other end of Hagerstown. So it's just nice to have some local talent here in the house. This next piece is another kind of staple of the same time period. It's a tune called Arkansas Traveler. And I believe this song, this tune was based on actually written like a short story from the time, middle of the 1800s, of a guy traveling through Arkansas, and he meets this strange character in a cabin. And anyways, the guy that was traveling was trying to explain to this guy that lived in the cabin about the tune. and it ended up being like a comedy scene as far as the story goes. But this is a tune called Arkansas Traveler, and it's certainly one you're going to hear a lot in Civil War circles. So this next piece definitely has a Scotch-Irish influences in it. It's a piece called Gary Owen. And
this was General Custer's favorite marching tune.
His last one.
yeah, it didn't work out so good for him. But he adopted it and they made it a regimental tune in like the 1860s. But before that, Scotch-Irish drinking song. And just liked it so much. And even recently, Richard and I were exchanging some stuff that we found online that we were looking at an old Zippo lighter. It was actually from the 70s sometime, Vietnam War era, and it had an inscription on one side, but on the other side it had the military insignia and said Gary Owen. And it was pretty neat. So it again, 175 years later, still pervades our history and our military.
George Washington liked it when I played it for him down in Mount Vernon. He did, so my hand.
He's still around, huh? All right, Gary.
Standing in for me.
Gary Owen. Hagerstown native to switch up instruments a little bit. He does double duty for us on the banjo. And out of all these instruments on the stage and thinking about Civil War history, the banjo is the most unique and the most influencing of period music. You know, the violin and the double bass, they would have come from Italy and Greek origins. You think of the mandolin like a lute, and the guitar from Spanish origins around the 1600s or so. But the banjo is really what encapsulates the middle of the 1800s and from the Civil War on. It's an instrument that comes from African origins, and of course they would have been a lot more primitive back then, fashioned out of gourds, not as many strings as what maybe a banjo might have nowadays. But you know, definitely influenced music of the day. You know, Civil War soldiers at the time, going into the Civil War in that middle of that century time period, immigrant music from the Scotch-Irish, and certainly banjo music and the influence that came from African slaves that were here. And later on, after the Civil War, the banjo would take more of a resemblance of what Rich has got. Rich, what year is your banjo?
1913.
1913. And really, it wasn't until well after the Civil War that the banjo took a more modern look and taking, because part of it because of the Industrial Revolution. You would have thought that this would have been the nicest instrument to have in the Civil War, the harmonica, but these were not mass-produced until after the Civil War. So if you had a harmonica during that time, it was handmade, they were fewer in number. Sure seems like a nice instrument to take along with you, but a non-factor. So the banjo was really king at this time period, so we're going to get Rich to play a couple tunes here. And this is a tune called Kingdom Coming. And this was an abolitionist tune. It was written by a publisher named Henry Clay Work. And so this is what we're going to do for that, Kingdom Coming. forked deer, and this has actually some local roots. I guess at the middle of the time period, middle of that century, the Civil War era, there was a book put out called the Virginia Reels, and this was a tune that was part of that. And I think it comes from Fauquier County. If you're ever driving down there, watch your speed. Every time I've gone to Fauquier County, I've gotten a ticket.
They attribute this tune to Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
He might have played this tune and called it folk here, but it turned into fork a deer.
Oh,
Like, like a folk story.
that makes sense.
Yeah.